Only recently, I reviewed the Matebook D16. This right here is the more premium, more expensive model that they did also release and launch in Berlin at their event. So the Matebook 16S, it's got some big improvements compared to the D16. It does have better cooling, so more copper, an extra fan, so 2 fans in total, to handle that super powerful 14-core, 20-thread Core i7-12700H. The same chip that I reviewed in the D16, but because of the better thermals that we do have here with this one, it performs a lot better. So it does have DDR5 RAM. We do have 16 gigabytes worth of it running at 4.8 gigahertz, 1 terabyte SSD, and Wi-Fi AX 211 chipset from Intel, which is Wi-Fi 6E. Very quick wireless. It's got Thunderbolt 4, which the D16 does not have, slimmer bezels and a touch screen and a much higher resolution screen. It is 16 inches and the 3:2 aspect ratio. Right up here in the top bezel is the same setup with the full HD AI webcam that this has, and I'll give you some samples of what it's like. So overall, this is a better machine as expected, more expensive, and I'll let you know all the pros and cons here in my time now testing out the Matebook 16S. Included in the box with the 12700H model, the Core i7, you will find the 90-watt power supply. It's a Type-C power supply and a Type-C to Type-C cable. Now, if you do happen to buy the more expensive 12900H version, which is the Core i9, instead of this 90-watt power supply, you'll get a 135-watt one. But apparently, all models do support the 135 watts if you happen to have one of those or you buy one separately. This Matebook has an excellent build quality, and you do notice that it does feel a lot more solid and better than the Matebook D16. This is a more expensive, more premium model. So this is the matte grey finish that they have with the paint job here. Very nice, feels good. Does pick up a few little smudges and fingerprints. Now this model here, you can open it just one-handed. A lot of people do like the one-handed hinge, and it feels really good, the hinge, and it goes back a reasonable amount to there with the touch screen. So we've got our speaker grills left and right of it, a very large touchpad. Now, to talk about the touchpad, what is it like to use? Very good. Typical Huawei. Now, it's not quite as good as the Matebook X Pro 2022 touchpad. That one goes right to the edge. It does have the little haptics in it. This doesn't have the haptics, but it is a very good touchpad. Finer movements, the cursor behaves itself. It doesn't jump all over the place. Gestures work well. We have built-in left and right mouse buttons, of course, with it. Overall, it is a decent touchpad. Now, it's a full alloy build here too. Palm rest, everything. I don't get any shocks from it, don't get any earth leakage or any problems like that. Feels really good. Keyboard, backlit. It's got approximately 1.5 millimeters of travel and there's very little flex in it. It's another great keyboard from them. Feels, again, a little bit better than the Matebook D16 model. That one is, well, it's still a very good keyboard, but this just feels a little bit better there with it. So we still do have these half arrow keys here. We've got our shortcuts at the top and you've got a function lock, caps lock, status LED. Power button doubles as a fingerprint reader too. A good X1 works really well, so you can use Windows Hello with it to log straight in instead of having to type in a password. So this is what the backlit keyboard does look like if you're, say, using it in an aircraft when they've got all the cabin lights dimmed off. You can see the keys really well. It's evenly distributed and we do have different levels. So that's just completely off, of course. The first level and then the brightest second level. Now, I'm really happy to see that they have not gone the way of the X series. They've kept all the ports with the S series. So we've got a full spec Type-C port, status LED, Thunderbolt 4, HDMI 2.0 according to my spec sheet that I've got, but I can report that it does run my 4K 120Hz TV and LG CX, no problems, no glitches, no issues. A 3.5mm headphone jack with good volume, clear, nice, powerful audio out of it. I do like it. And then 2 very practical Type A USB 3.2s Gen 1. So plenty of ports on this. Can't really complain about that. But what I would have liked to have seen is maybe here an SD card slot. Would have been good. An ultra high speed one at that. But hey, maybe with the next revisions they can do that. And then on the underside here, we've got our intakes. So there are 2 fans. You can just see them. So 2 fans there. Copper transfer cooling pipes inside. The hot air is then blowing out the back here. And we've got these 2 large feet. Now there is a gap, slightly lower height of them right here. and here to help with the airflow. Speaking of height, this particular laptop is approximately 18 millimeters, and the weight of it is 1.99 kilos. And according to my scales, it's actually 2.01 kilos. Now, the total travel weight, let's take a look at that. That's the important one for me. So with the 90-watt power supply and Type-C cable, it's 2.25 if we round it up there kilos, which is not bad for a 16-inch laptop, but it's certainly not the lightest. Bezels are excellent too with the screen, and right up here we do have our 1080p webcam. So here is a sample of it in action with the AI features. So this is a 1080p camera with the AI features, and the audio is being recorded on it right now, which sounds good, and the quality is looking pretty good. Now, with these backgrounds, what it's doing is basically removing me from my current image and then putting me into this virtual background. So I can swap over to a meeting room, okay? And this is the office one. And then you've got blurry. So blurry is just blurring out my existing background there, what I have. And you've got custom ones too that you can add yourself. So I go back to absolutely no background. This is when we get the best quality possible. So it is 30 frames per second. Now there is a auto centering mode too as well, and I'll demonstrate that. This degrades the quality a little bit because it's cropping in, and I've noticed that sometimes it gets a little bit glitchy. So hopefully with software updates they can improve this. See, now it's cropped into me, zoomed in, and if it looks like I'm going to be leaving the frame, so if I go over this way more, you'll see what will happen is the camera now is going to center me. It's going to follow me. So that's what it's all about, auto-centering. So it's good for people that do move about. Imagine that you're someone that is moving from one side of your desk to another. It's going to keep you in frame there. However, that, as I just mentioned, is the quality that seems to downgrade a little bit, and it can sometimes get a little bit glitchy. So I go back to absolutely no zoom there, no auto-centering mode, and that's our best possible quality. And just one more time, that background there, which is quite handy to have these features with a reasonably good webcam here built into the Matebook 16S. Continuing on with that screen, so the resolution of this IPS panel is 2520 by 6080. Now it's only 60 Hertz, so there sadly is no option here for 90 Hertz like we do have with some of the other Matebook laptops, for example the 14S, which I really do like. So that's one thing we're missing out on with this particular screen. Now the touch accuracy of this touch panel is good. It responds to touch really well, it's fast, and the brightness does top out. You can see here what I measured with my Spider X Pro, 341 nits was the brightest point there. So it's not bad in terms of brightness, but it could certainly be a little bit brighter considering it is a glass-covered, fully laminated touch screen. Now when we take a look at our color coverage here, sRGB we've got 97%. With NTSC here, you'll see that this one is 67%, Adobe RGB, 72%, and then our P3 is also 72%. So overall, it's not a bad screen at all. My only real complaint is I wish it had a 90 Hertz option. I know that a lot of us tech YouTubers tend to throw around phrases like monster, insane performance, beast, and all that, but really, that's kind of the first thing I think about when I do think about the performance of this particular laptop. So it is extremely quick in everything I've done. I don't experience any lag. There's no point me showing general computing because this thing just rips through everything, blazing quick, really good responses. But why is that? Well, that's because this particular chipset here, the 12700H, as I mentioned in the beginning, has a huge amount of cores. So a whopping 14 cores, 20 threads in total, and 4.7 gigahertz maximum turbo, and it's a 45 watt part here, so it's very potent. It's paired up with Iris Xe graphics that does run for integrated graphics really good, but this particular configuration is really screaming a dedicated GPU. I wish Huawei, this is one thing I hope that they do change in the future, and they listen to me here too as well, and a lot of other tech reviewers, is they give us an option for, say, an RTX 3050 dedicated GPU would be perfect with this configuration for 3D editing, video editing, and even a little bit of gaming would be good there. So when you take a look at our benchmarks, Geekbench 5 score here, very good. This is an extremely high score, especially this multi-core score, thanks to those 20 threads and that high turbo single core performance with the new 12th gen. The Alder Lake has really improved here. Now it is paired up with DDR5 RAM that's running at 4.8 gigahertz, 16 gigabytes worth in dual channel, non-upgradable sadly. So there's no configuration with 32 gigabytes. That would also be very good to have, but sadly we're lacking that. So here we have the OpenCL score. Now this is based off graphics, and for the Iris Xe graphics, that's actually very good. The same here for Night Raid. So Night Raid can pull just over 2,000, in fact almost 23,000 points here for dedicated graphics. That is an excellent score, aided again by that very fast DDR5 RAM. And Firestrike, even testing this out, this gets a very decent score for integrated graphics. So it's a monster. It really is. Even though I don't like using those kind of words, the typical tech YouTuber vocabulary, it really is. And look at this here with Geekbench. With Cinebench. Cinebench R23, another absolutely amazing score here. Over 14,000 points after 10 minutes of just looping this benchmark, really stressing it out, and the single core performance there is really good. Now look at that. That is nearing up towards a Ryzen Threadripper performance. Okay, that is just how good it is. That's a 16-core desktop chip and a very power-hungry chip at that needs water cooling, basically. And this is getting close to it. That is the big leap we do have with the 12th gen. Now, included software we get from Huawei, they're pretty good. They don't include any McAfee antivirus that's basically bloatware. No, we get their PC Manager, which is very practical software. So you can connect up other Huawei devices. You've got Huawei Share and Huawei Super Device as well. So very good for just seamlessly streaming just your desktop display over onto other devices, moving files. I'll cover this before in my other videos. It's actually very handy software. And then we've got all our settings in here for that camera. Now this all takes place, the background changes with AI. I'll give you an example of this soon. It's all on the driver level, the device level. So if you're using Zoom, Skype, other voice applications with video, okay, so other video chat apps, it's going to work with all of them, which is really handy to have. So good, and I'll give you an example of that later on too. And optimization tab, driver updates, they all pull through in one place. This again is very handy. I've updated a lot of drivers, and I've just got a new one that's come through in the last day or two, another BIOS update. So there's already been one, and this is to improve the system stability, but I've had no issues, so it's good that they're pulling through those updates there. So handy software to have. One area here of criticism from me is that while this is very quick, still, yes, it's a 1 terabyte SSD for our storage, but it's only PCIe 3.0 spec. Ever since 11th gen with Intel, we've moved over now to PCIe 4 drives, which most manufacturers are using, but for some reason Huawei's not swapping over. I think it's to do with costs. PCIe 4 SSDs are a lot more expensive than PCIe 3 because it's now older tech, so it's probably why, but still very good speeds out of it. Speaking of good speeds and fast, that RAM, as I mentioned, is at 4.8 gigahertz, but we also do have this. So with our wireless, we are looking at the Intel Wi-Fi AX211. This is a Wi-Fi 6E chipset. Very quick, you can get gigabit transfer speeds on this one. I'm able to get with my router about 1.4 gigabits per second, so faster than a gigabit LAN port if this laptop did have one. So great wireless speeds with this model here. So they've bundled up an excellent card that does have Bluetooth 5.2. Then throwing something very demanding at the Matebook 16S here, which is 4K video editing. By the way, these are 100 megabit per second files, so they're more demanding than, say, a standard 60 megabit bit rate. And at half playback resolution here, it is not dropping frames. Now, even though it's integrated graphics only, Iris Xe does have its limitations. So if you do have very complex, layered, lots of transitions, grading, everything like that, all on top of one another, then yes, it will start to suffer a little bit and end up dropping frames and getting a little bit slow. But for a basic 4K edit, yes, the spec is going to be able to work fine for it. So let's have a look now at the export times. A 1 minute of footage, which I'll be exporting using the 4K YouTube preset. Now with this very fast RAM and this really potent chipset, that should really rip through this without any problems. So start on our timer and then export here. And you'll see that it's steaming ahead. Look at that, telling me it's only got about, well, 20 seconds left. Now it is about to finish up, and this is extremely quick. So you can say around 27 seconds. That's a new record for 4K export times on these type of laptops that I do review. So extremely quick export times. That's amazing performance there. And just to point out too that I am using the performance mode. So that's function P. You can go between balanced 45 watts and performance, which is a enhanced increased 60 watts. So that does definitely speed things up a little bit. Quick look at gaming performance. So while this is not a gaming PC at all, and you wouldn't expect it to be with just integrated graphics, it's playing Cyberpunk here, 2077, 720p is the option that I've set for the resolution, and lowest visuals, of course, just to try and keep that frame rate up. Now, it's looking really good. It's around 40 frames per second, dips down the lowest I've seen with a bit of action going on in a firefight and whatnot, is to about 30 frames per second. So it's still playable. If you're a console gamer, you're probably used to 30 frames per second anyway, well, if you're on last gen. So not bad at all from the Iris Xe graphics. Let's take a look at another game and see how it does perform. And here with GTA, we are looking at a very good frame rate. I have seen as high as 110 frames per second. It just got up to about 100 then. For integrated graphics, it is performing really well. And again, it's probably down to the fact that we've got that very quick DDR5 RAM running at 4.8 gigahertz. It's really helping out. Now, the settings I have this game set to is not actually the lightest either. I've got it set to 1080p and all the settings to normal, view distance, and the pedestrian varieties all in the middle of that bar. So you can lower things down, but really good performance here. 85 frames per second, 90. This is probably one of the best when it comes to average frame rate out of a laptop here with only integrated graphics. Very good. I'm impressed with what I'm seeing here. And then our thermals and fan noise. So I've seen this with the previous Matebooks that I've been reviewing, and this happens. So it does get quite high, the temperatures, and it will peak at thermal throttling temperatures. It will briefly thermal throttle. So what happens is the fan curve that they've used, and there have been a couple of BIOS updates, I'm now on the latest, it seems to be a little slow at times. So it will peak at those temperatures, but once the fan RPMs ramp up, the temperatures then drop down to very acceptable levels. So you can be gaming away or editing videos, exporting videos, and it will just be in the 80s, which is perfectly fine. So it's just that it's a little slow sometimes to get the fan RPMs up. Fan noise on this model is very good. So when you're using it and with it plugged in into power, the fan is running, yes, but it's running at a very low RPM and you hardly ever hear the fans. It's only when you do something demanding, there's a slight whooshing sound. It's not super annoying and it does not sound like a gaming laptop, even though it basically has a gaming laptop chipset in it. Now, a great laptop also does need great speakers, and thankfully this Matebook 16S does have some very decent speakers. So they are left and right of our keyboard, and here is a sample of them at 100% volume. So they're loud, they've got a bit of bass, and really I don't see anyone complaining too much about these speakers. They're not the best I've heard, but they're certainly above average. Just to briefly mention too, Linux, if you're going to be running it on the system, I did test out a live boot USB pen, ran into issues with the Wi-Fi card, the AX211, and the touchscreen as well. I couldn't get that to work. So that's just one thing to think about there if you're going to be running Linux. Now, battery life, the 84 watt hour battery, it's a decent size. It's, okay, not 99 watt hours, but it's still getting up there. I managed to get just over 7 hours and 20 minutes of very light use. So I set it to the balance mode, power saving mode too, with Windows, and I was only running the screen at 30% brightness and just doing light work. So if you're doing lighter kind of tasks, it should be able to make it through a full day. The charge is also very small and compact and easy enough to take it with you and plug it in and charge it when you need. And of course, if you want to use the function and then P mode, which goes into the performance mode, increasing the power limit, you do need to have it plugged in for that. And that can really deliver those really good scores you've seen when it comes to synthetic benchmarks, but it's an absolute monster. So the performance on this, CPU power-wise, is through the roof. This thing is so fast and powerful. But that's when it comes to my criticism of, well, why don't we have another one of these models, exact same spec, but they put an RTX 3050 in it, for example. I know a lot of people are really wanting that from Huawei, and I hope they're listening to this feedback, that it would be a great thing to have for people that work with, say, CAD, so 3D designers, people that are video editing like myself. A dedicated GPU certainly does help out. Now, Iris Xe graphics, yes, can go, but only so far really. It does help out with video editing, and yes, you can do basic 4K edits, and you can do some basic 3D kind of work. You saw gaming performance wasn't too bad. But this model with a dedicated GPU, I think would then really open up to another set of consumers that would be looking for a model like this. It's not a gaming laptop, but yet it pretty much has a gaming CPU that the gaming laptops use in it, but being a lot thinner with good thermals. Well, the thermals did peak at 100 degrees Celsius, but it's only for a few seconds. Once the fan RPMs do pick up, they're a little bit slow, and you continue with the demanding work, the thermals are actually perfectly fine on this model here. So it's got a great touchpad, great keyboard, good sound, nice screen, really good touch accuracy. It's pretty much ticking a lot of boxes there. Thunderbolt 4 support, battery life, very good overall. It's just that really that I hope they add GPU support. The other very minor complaint from me is everyone else has switched over to PCIe 4.0 SSDs. For some reason with the NVMe drives, Huawei's still using PCIe 3. I think it's just cost saving, but I do hope, and I think now it's the time to do it, is because also their competitors, other brands out there are using PCIe 4 around this price point, so it's time that Huawei also move over to the faster, newer standard for SSDs there. So thank you so much for watching my review here of Huawei's Matebook 16S. Do check out the other 12th gen laptop from them, which is the Matebook D16. My review of that is up here, and I do hope to see you in the next one. Bye for now.